For those that might not be so familiar with the entire system that we've designed for studying Srimad Bhagavatam, I just wanted to go over it briefly. The purpose of the book, Srimad Bhagavatam, is the literary incarnation of God. Idam Brahma, Idam Bhagavatam Nama, Pranam Brahma Samitam. And the actual purpose, if we understand the purpose of the message in the book, then it makes it easier to follow the steps that will bring us to that purpose. And the purpose is to awaken or invoke a loving devotional attitude of service toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Conditioned souls in the material world are here because that is not proper in their heart, and correction is required. So the different steps of the Vedas bring one from the lower stages in the mode of ignorance up through the modes of passion and goodness, and ultimately to the transcendental platform. So it's a gradual process. And the more one applies themselves to the tenets of that process, the more smooth the progress and process takes place. So we've designed our study of Srimad Bhagavatam with different exercises in mind, because gradually performing these processes one after another will have that desired effect. So we post the 2 lessons online every week, twice. And as you saw in the email that I sent out called Study Method, the idea is that you become familiar with those particular topics. You can see they're thematically composed. There's a different theme each week or each lesson. And the idea is like building blocks. Become absorbed in that one lesson and what its message is by reading or listening to the podcast or both. And then the next step is to chant your japa, meditate, become absorbed in those topics that are being described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then become even more absorbed by contemplating and sharing with others what you realized while you were chanting and meditating in the form of the forum posts. Just the act of writing requires a deeper absorption in any topic that you're presenting. It's a natural system with writing that when you do that, you become absorbed in what you're going to share. So it helps the author and reader and participant become even more absorbed in that process and that topic and those people and the activities, the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord, because that's what Srimad Bhagavatam presents. And then finally on Saturday, we get together and we go over these things as a review. So the idea isn't just to learn the story of what's going on, but it's to actually become more and more absorbed in the different topics which are being presented. Just wanted to let everyone know. And thank you for all those that are sharing with their written, taking the time to do that, because it's really nice. This week, there was some very good ones about associating with saintly people and how that had affected different people. That was really sweet. So now we'll go on to the texts and do our review.
Okay, I'd like to mention also that if you're not speaking, keep your mic on mute, because that way we'll be able to hear clearly the person who is speaking. Aaron, I think you have to mute your mic, if you don't mind, until you speak. Thank you. Also, my husband mentioned Manvantara shared a nice story about Fiore Mochan. And I'm very good friends with Ananga Manjari, Chaitamayi, and Vajra. So that was very sweet to read your forum entry. Okay, so shall we begin? Patsy, you want to read? Or...
Okay, yes. One point was that last week we had a short session because Niranjana Swami had come on to give the overview of what's happening in Ukraine. So these last two verses of chapter 21 were included in last week's lesson, but I've included them here just to bring us up to where we are. So this is the third canto, chapter 21, text 55. Kardama Muni continued, speaking with Swayambhuva Manu. If you gave up all thought of the world's situation, unrighteousness would flourish, for men would hanker only after money and would be unopposed. Such miscreants would attack, and the world would perish. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad Gita describes the duties of the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. When there is no such training, one simply claims that because he's born as a Brahmin or a Kshatriya in a Brahmin or Kshatriya family, he is therefore a Brahmin or Kshatriya, even though he performs the duties of a Sudra. Such undue claims to being higher caste men make the system of scientific social orders in a caste system completely degrading the original system. Thus, society is now in chaos, and there is neither peace nor prosperity. It is clearly stated here that unless there is vigilance of a strong king, impious, unqualified men will claim a certain status in society, and that will make the social order perish.
Okay. So that also has to do with our material situation. And of course, we can use this for Krishna, but something came up last week. There was a discussion. This is a material thing, what category we think that we belong to, whether it's a Vaishya, a Sudra, a businessman, a teacher, whatever. Those are things that deal with the modes of nature, but devotional service is transcendental to that. So we'll discuss more about that later too. Okay, Manvatar, would you like to read this last verse in chapter 21?
Text 56. In spite of all this, I ask you, O valiant king, the purpose for which you have come here. Whatever it may be, we shall carry it out without reservation. Purport. When a guest comes to a friend's house, it is understood that there is some special purpose. Kardama Muni could understand that such a great king as Swayambhuva, although traveling to inspect the condition of his kingdom, must have had some special purpose to come to his hermitage. Thus he prepared himself to fulfill the king's desire. Formerly, it was customary that the sages used to go to the kings, and the kings used to visit the sages in their hermitages. Each was glad to fulfill the other's purpose. This reciprocal relationship is called Bhakti Kara. This is a nice verse describing the relationship of mutual beneficial interest between the Brahmana and the Sastriya. Sastram Divjatam. Sastram means the royal order, and Divjatam means the Brahminical order. The two were meant for mutual interests. The royal order would give protection to the Brahmanas for the cultivation of spiritual advancement in society, and the Brahmanas would give their valuable instruction to the royal order on how the state and citizens can gradually be elevated in spiritual perfection.
Okay, that would be the ideal society. Hare Krishna. Shall we go on, Patti?
Did Manvantara have any realizations or anything to share?
No, it just give a reason of how cooperatively the four orders interacted, and especially, the Brahmanas and the Sastriyas.
Kshatriyas. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have something to say about that before we start? The marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti? We're all okay to go on? Okie dokie. Vaishnavi, are you there? If you are, would you like to read?
Okay.
Okay.
Shri Maitreya said, Srimad Bhagavatam 3.22.1, Sri Maitreya said, after describing the greatness of the emperor's manifold qualities and activities, the sage became silent, and the emperor, feeling modesty, addressed him as follows. 3.22.2, Manu replied, to expand himself in Vedic knowledge, Lord Brahma, the personified Veda, from his face created you, the Brahmanas, who are full of austerity, knowledge, and the mystic power, and are averse to sense gratification. Purport. The purpose of the Vedas is to propagate the transcendental knowledge of the absolute truth. The Brahmanas were created from the mouth of the Supreme Person, and therefore they are meant to spread the knowledge of the Vedas in order to spread the glories of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna says that all the Vedas are meant for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is specifically mentioned here that the Brahmanas are created from the face of the cosmic personality or Virata Purusha. Similarly, the Kshatriyas are said to be created from his arms, the Vaishyas are created from his waist, and the Shudras are created from his legs. Brahmanas are especially meant for austerity, learning, and knowledge, and are averse to all kinds of sense gratification.
You have something to say about that, Vaishnavi?
No, nothing to say from my side. It's very clear there.
These definitions of the different orders of life these are the characteristics of people who have these tendencies. You know, we're all born, Prabhupada said, we're all born in the Kali Yuga as Sudras, so we need a very simple method. So that's an important point to understand, that these ashrams are, and mostly these varnas are how to function in the world, right? How to function in the world. But we have this Yuga Dharma now, which is transcendental to that, and which actually deserves all of our attention, or most of our attention, you know. So, okay, let's continue.
I didn't understand that. What requires our attention?
The Yuga Dharma, the activities of the soul, this devotional service.
Which are?
The Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam.
Okay, right.
The engaging devotional service, which is infinite.
And any one of the varnas are ashrams.
Any one of the varnas are ashrams, because if there would be a question, which one do I fit in, which sometimes comes up. We do what's necessary to maintain our existence, but then we get down to the real work at hand. It doesn't mean, you know, because we're raised in this materialistic society. What are you going to be when you grow up? And you have to go to school for a certain talent and develop it and the whole thing. And then we forget about the real goal of human life. So as we progress spiritually, we understand where to put our main focus. We're doing something now in the material world to survive. We'll do something another time. But the main focus, if we want to know the absolute truth, should be to engage in devotional service and to become transcendental to all these different aspects of material life. Not that we ignore it, but don't be in anxiety that you don't fit into the material world. Hey, that's pretty good. We don't fit into the material world. Chaita, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the difference between material varnashram and Daivi varnashram.
Okay, Daivi varnashram means using your propensities to serve Krishna. If someone really wants to cook, they cook for Krishna. Everything that you do, in fact, everything that we do has to be done as an offering to Krishna. That sounds like Bhagavad Gita verse. What verse is that? Everything you do, everything you eat, everything that offers should be
926?
926, or I think that's 927, right?
7. Okay.
Yeah. So that everything that we do because we all do different things. But everything that we do, if we can do that as an offering to Krishna, that's devotional service.
The point in comparison to that, the not Daivi Varnashram is that there are rules and regulations, rituals, that if one is born into a particular family, if they're on the material plane and going to perform the duties of that particular Varna that they're born into, then the Vedas prescribe so many rituals, rules, ceremonies, and activities, but not necessarily for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of
Right,
Godhead,
right.
simply because they're duties of a social position. So that's the difference between Daivi. Daivi means divine. So that's the difference.
Thank you.
Premananda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so would it be correct to say that material varnashram already exists? Because if you look at any sphere of life, there is some level of hierarchy, right? You have the intellectual class, you have the administrative class, you have the worker class, you have the Shudra class. So I think it exists, right? Material varnashram exists. What is lacking is Daivi varnashram.
That's actually, my husband mentioned that last week, that because it was created by God, it will always exist.
Okay.
That was actually in the purport, I think,
Oh,
right? It was in a purport that those things exist, but they're extremely corrupted.
Mhm.
I wouldn't call it a Varnashram system. Prabhupada pointed out that when the Varnas and ashrams are actually meant to be spiritual. But because Srila Prabhupada explained in that purport that because India became so influenced by invaders, first the Muslims from Persia and Arabia, and then the English corrupted the entire culture through education and
Right.
their positions, and it turned into a caste system.
Mhm.
He noted the difference between Varna ashram and caste system. In other words, a caste system was simply you're born into a family and
Right.
therefore you take on, whereas the ashram and Varnas is more like, we can see that in the ideal state, obviously everybody would like to be educated
Mhm.
in what's natural for them and become proficient and good at it and use that to live their lives. But in today's Kali Yuga, it's so watered down and diluted that it's very difficult to find those qualities, what to speak of educate a particular person in those qualities.
Right. Okay, good point. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Vaishnavi. You didn't have anything else to add for that? What you read? Let's go. We're going to go on with Eka Radhika. Would you like to read, Eka?
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3.22.3, for the projection of the Brahmanas, the thousand-legged Supreme Being created us, the Kshatriyas from his 1,000 arms. Hence the Brahmanas are said to be his heart and the Kshatriyas his arms. Kshatriyas, Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kshatriyas are specifically meant to maintain the Brahmanas, because if the Brahmanas are protected, then the head of civilization is protected. Brahmanas are supposed to be the head of the social body. If the head is clear and has not gone mad, then everything is in proper position. The Lord is described thus: Namo Brahmanya Devaya Gu Brahmana Itaya Cha. The purpose of this prayer is that the Lord specifically protects the Brahmanas and the cows, and then he protects all other members of society, Jagat Didaya. It is his will that universal welfare work depends on the protection of cows and Brahmanas. Thus, Brahminical culture and cow protection are the basic principles for human civilization. Kshatriyas are especially meant to protect the Brahmanas, as is the supreme will of the Lord. Go Brahmana Itayata. As the heart is a very important part within the body, so the Brahmanas are also the important element in human society. The Kshatriyas are more like the whole body. Even though the whole body is bigger than the heart is more important. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. That's very, very clear, I think. Does anyone have something to add to that, Eka? Do you have something to add to that? Or can you
No.
see that?
Not something to add. Maybe one question that somebody could have is like how to understand that someone is more important than the other one. Maybe it could be like a question that somebody who is coming into Krishna consciousness could have, and maybe we can answer that question.
Well, there's actually this word important. There's no one more important or less important. Everybody's important. Every soul is important. We see examples of that. Bhaktisiddhanta used to ask the Sankirtan devotees when they came back, what did you do? And then the story of the lemon, the story of the one lady, she was going to give a lemon, so we didn't take it. So he said, go back, get that lemon, or go back and get the ash. Everything is important in this philosophy. Each soul is important and worthy of being saved. Then your attitude, yatamam prapadyante, how the soul responds to Krishna consciousness, that's another story. But everyone's important. In fact, this whole varnashram system, everyone's important. The Sudras are important because they have their work to do. The Brahmins are important. Everything that is created is important. The most important thing is to know where, what you're supposed to do. And that was one of the questions that we're trying to solve.
I think you just brought up a point that's more generalized. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada's pointing out, and also Manu and Kardama in their discussions are expressing how important, what does important mean? Important means guidance.
Right.
Otherwise, without proper guidance, we can see today in the world, look at the chaos that's being manifest due to very poor leadership and improper governance by low-class leaders in the world today. Abortion, meat eating, intoxication, state-funded lotteries. These functions are not advancing society, they're degrading it. So the sense that importance means that it's more beneficial, it's important. It's more important to have somebody who knows what they're doing rather than somebody that's just in complete ignorance doing it, like a Sudra. He's unqualified or she's unqualified to make decisions and set policy, but yet they're doing so and misguiding people. So in that sense, of course, everybody's important. That's an understood point. But
yeah, understood.
But what's being described here is why they're important or more important.
That word guidance really hit home. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. That's true. Hare Krishna.
I have a question, Mother Samapriya.
Okay.
The purport, I don't remember exactly what it says. I remember hearing it on the audio too, but it says the Brahmana is the heart also, so the head and the heart. Could you say something about that? I guess it's to do with guidance, but.
Pati, you want to answer that? Because sometimes the Brahmins are considered the head. And now the comparison is that the Brahmins are the heart. What do you think? Can you?
In this particular purport, he is mentioning the head, the heart. Oh, sorry, it's one before it. But here, he's just pointing out that the heart is important, as the heart is a very important part within the body. So the Brahmins are also an important element in human society. The Kshatriyas are more like the whole body. Even though the whole body is bigger than the heart is more important.
It's an analogy, right?
Exactly.
An analogy. To show the great importance. Without the heart, the body falls apart. There's no, you need the heart. That's the source of energy. And so the Brahmin directs, as was said, the guidance. This is the heart of society. If people don't know what to do, then society falls apart.
Is that clear, Shyam Govinda?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, why don't you continue reading, Shyam Govinda, if that would be all right with you?
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, Text 4. That is why the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas protect each other, as well as themselves, and the Lord himself, who is both the cause and effect, and is yet immutable, protects them through each other. Purport. The entire social structure of Varna and Ashram is a cooperative system meant to uplift all to the highest platform of spiritual realization. The Brahmanas are intended to be protected by the Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas also are intended to be enlightened by the Brahmanas. When the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas cooperate nicely, the other subordinate divisions, the Vaishyas or mercantile people, and the Sudras or laborer class automatically flourish. The entire elaborate system of Vedic society was therefore based on the importance of the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. The individual soul is the proprietor of the individual body, but the supersoul, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the proprietor of all bodies everywhere. He is the proprietor not only of human bodies, but of birds, beasts, and all other entities, not only on this planet, but on other planets also. He is a supreme proprietor. Therefore, he does not become divided by protecting the different individual souls. He remains one and the same. That the sun appears on top of everyone's head when at the meridian does not imply that the sun becomes divided. One man thinks that the sun is on his head only, whereas 5,000 miles away, another man is thinking that the sun is only on his head. Similarly, the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is one, but he appears to individually oversee each individual soul. This does not mean that the individual soul and the Supersoul are one. They are one in quality as spirit soul, but the individual soul and Supersoul are different.
Good. I just wanted to go back before we talk about this to the last discussion about the importance. You know, when people are satisfied within themselves performing their allotted work, then there's no question of who's important, who's not important. People have to accept. We have to accept that. Prabhupada tells this story about this. All the senses had a meeting one time because they were thinking, you know, with giving food to the stomach, and we're not getting anything. So they had a meeting. They decided they're going to go on strike. So nobody was giving food to the stomach. The hands were just holding the food, but so they weren't. And then they started to become weak. So then again they had a meeting, and what they had. This is Prabhupada telling the story. It's so sweet. And then they realized that unless you give food to the stomach, then the activities of the hands and the feet and all the different aspects of the body are not going to function properly. So in the same way, when the Brahmanas are guiding, when the Kshatriyas are protecting and giving the laws, then the rest of society and the Vaishyas are taking care of the cows and business, and Sudras are engaging their proper performance of duties, then society runs peacefully and nobody is in competition. Everyone is satisfied. And that can be achieved in relation to Krishna. Materially, it's very difficult for people to achieve that platform of equality. But if everyone understands that my duty is to serve Krishna and my service to Krishna is this, even if your service to Krishna is that, it becomes, it's a transcendental platform. Anyway, I thought it was important to remind ourselves of that. You know, there is a difference between material and spiritual activities in that light. Chaita.
I really appreciate this verse emphasizing the relationship between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. It's intrinsic that they maintain a relationship, they continue their dialogue. And if that's not there, then both of them are going to be depleted.
Right.
And that just seems to be so missing in leadership these days, because instead of taking on a wise spiritual person as an advisor, most administrators are taking on other business people as their advisors.
It's not based on God consciousness. That's the problem.
Did Sham Govinda have anything to say, Sham?
Sham, yes, I'm sorry. I just cut you right off after you read.
That's completely
Please.
fine.
No. So what do you have to say about this very important verse?
I don't have much about the verse. I think came up for me while I was reading, but I do. What did come up for me when I was reading was like, it's actually very difficult to know what one's duty is, because we're a little, seems like, well, in my case, but I don't know where I fall in. Sometimes
That's because
I
you,
feel-
okay, go on.
sometimes I'm definitely just better to be working, and other cases I'm better to be sitting down thinking. But it's hard to know what one's duty is early on.
Well, just because you work doesn't mean you don't think. And just because you think doesn't mean you don't work. We these things, we spend our whole lives trying to figure out how we fit into society. It's very clear. You have a child, you have to take care of the kid. You definitely have to take care of your child. You have a wife, you have a family, that's there. And you do what you can. But the main business, we have to understand, what is the main business? The main business is to become Krishna conscious. That has to be the center. That makes it really easy. It's not that we ignore or deny our material responsibilities. We cannot do that. We cannot do that, because if we do, then we're not really following Krishna. We have the responsibility. We must fulfill it. But we have to understand our main responsibility. And that's to become Krishna conscious. It's not that Prabhupada, when someone wants to take sannyas, he wants to take sannyas because he can't stand the household life. He doesn't want to be bothered with his kids and his wife. That is not what is meant here. You take on responsibility, you fulfill it. Why? Because Krishna wants you to. You want to please Krishna by showing that you're upstanding and doing your responsibility. But the real first, primemost responsibility that every human being has is to become Krishna conscious. And as a parent, a teacher, a guru, any kind of person in a position where other people will be listening to him or her, it is the duty to encourage that. Tisha, is that all right, Sham?
Yeah, I think, paraphrasing it all, I think the real lesson in any undertaking is one's character, not necessarily their position.
Yeah. And how is this good for my Krishna consciousness or not? And how do am I fooling myself? And then we could also take counsel from other people. But this seems to be a big thing nowadays. Who am I? Who am I? Oh my goodness. That's it. Am I a Brahmin? Lord Chaitanya said, I am not a Brahmin. I am not a Kshatriya. I am not a Sudra. I'm not a Vaishya. I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis, who are the dearest devotees.
Let's hear from Tisha.
Oh, Tisha. Sorry. I
Hi,
get
Krishna.
carried away. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I love it.
Hare
No,
Krishna.
it seems to me, looking into Krishna consciousness, I've read so many books, Yamuna's book, Shima Sundara, just the experiences that they had, that Prabhupada had the society of Krishna consciousness. He knew what everyone's propensities were, and that's the things that they did, the people who built the temples or go start a temple here. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm just looking inside from the books and stuff. And so that's what I was saying in my post. I just, I wonder what I would have done, where would I have fit in? Because like Sham Govinda was saying, it's hard to know what should I be doing, It is hard.
I think there's a root misunderstanding there, as you're describing, Tisha, assuming that they functioned because Srila Prabhupada knew exactly what they could do. Of course, there was some element of that, but he gave orders to everyone, and it wasn't like he could. He like, for example, we were listening the other night to Tamal Krishna Maharaj's memories. And what happened was when he joined, the temple didn't have proper funds. Jayananda was driving his taxi in San Francisco. He was the temple president, driving a taxi. And that's how the temple was being maintained. And Srila Prabhupada said, this isn't fair that everyone's just living off Jayananda's taxi driver job. So Guru Das got a job at Kodak. And then Tamal Krishna got a lower position in Kodak. And his first job was simply to break the, you know how film used to come in little canisters. His job at Kodak was simply to break the top off the film and put it into a heating element, and then bring that part that he had done to Guru Das, who would develop it. So they were working just very mundane, simple jobs to maintain and do what was necessary to do that at the time. So according to time, place, and circumstance, as things changed, then they also gradually evolved. It wasn't that everybody was just put into the exact right position because Prabhupada was some kind of super chess master who knew where everybody would fit. That may have been there on a super high plane, but he did have people do very simple, basic functions to maintain. But as Samapriya was saying, the whole idea, just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever tapasya or performances you perform should be done as an offering unto me. So whatever work we're doing, that should be somehow or another for the pleasure of Krishna. And that's the perfection of that work, whatever it is.
Oh, can I just add something to that? Sorry. Also, Prabhupada had a mission. We had to assist Srila Prabhupada in establishing the Krishna consciousness movement. So even though people didn't know they had a propensity for one thing or another, people were sent out to distribute books. People were sent in the sewing room learning how to sew for the deities, or in the kitchen. There, a lot of things had to be done to establish this movement. You know, I don't know if it was my propensity to go out on Sankirtan. I did it for 15 years, but every day in the van when I was going out, I said, I don't know what I'm doing. Help, Srila Prabhupada, I'm doing this for you, because you're encountering all kinds of uncomfortable situations. So it's not that you're searching for what you think is the best thing. Prabhupada said, we loved Prabhupada. So he said, we have to open a temple. I'll do it. Or we have to distribute these books. I'll do it. You know, we were motivated by love for Prabhupada and understood that he thought it was the most important thing to establish Krishna consciousness. So as my husband was saying, it's not that everybody was placed in their perfect slot at all times, you know. We were given an opportunity to serve Krishna, which is transcendental to all the different varnas and ashrams.
Although it might not be a transcendental quote, I've always appreciated something. It was either Thomas Jefferson or Benjamin Franklin. And the statement is, do what you can with what you have where you are.
Ben Franklin.
That's common sense. And you apply that to Krishna consciousness, it's a perfect formula.
Well, Prabhupada did say, and this is coming from Brahmananda, he said, Prabhupada always would say that Krishna consciousness is 90% common sense. And that's a fact. And if you think about it, but we just had to learn how to think. I think we should go on now, if that's all right with the reading. Tisha, why don't you pick up here?
Thank you. That was so helpful. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22, verse 5. Now I have resolved all my doubts simply by meeting you, for your lordship has very kindly and clearly explained the duty of a king who desires to protect his subjects. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Manu described herewith the result of seeing a great saintly person. Lord Chaitanya says that one should always try to associate with saintly persons, because if one establishes a proper association with a saintly person, even for a moment, one attains all perfection. Somehow or other, if one meets a saintly person and achieves his favor, then the entire mission of one's human life is fulfilled. What is not possible to achieve in thousands of lives can be achieved in one moment if there is an opportunity to meet a saintly person. It is therefore enjoined in Vedic literature that one should always try to associate with saintly persons and try to disassociate oneself from the common man, because by one word of a saintly person, one can be liberated from material entanglement. A saintly person has the power, because of his spiritual advancement, to give immediate liberation to the conditioned soul. Here, Manu admits that all his doubts are now over because Kardama has very kindly described the different duties of individual souls.
And Pati, you want to explain this wonderful picture?
Oh, this was in the purport for those that read it. Srila Prabhupada, I didn't include it because it was in the purports that everyone was supposed to read. But it's Srila Prabhupada explained that he had this personal experience that in 1922, when he was a young man, he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati at a preaching engagement. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta instructed him that you should preach this message of Lord Chaitanya in English language. And that simple instruction became a theme throughout Srila Prabhupada's life. And he described in that purport how his entire life became transcendentalized by that one instruction, and therefore helped him become liberated from his humble point of view by following those instructions.
And you see this picture of Prabhupada there in the front, yeah. And so also that helps to understand the instruction that Prabhupada, that was so important for Prabhupada. He came to the West, made disciples to help him execute the order of his spiritual master. This is real disciplic succession. So it doesn't matter at that point what propensity we had. We were fortunate to be able to serve Prabhupada. And guess what? We still are, and everyone still is. So
that's the main point.
That's the main.
That instruction comes through the parampara from the beginning. Brahma told Narada, Narada told Vyas, Vyas wrote the books, Madhvacharya, all his disciples, down to Lord Chaitanya and his followers. The whole idea is to, once one catches that current, then it doesn't matter what they do materially. Do what you can with what you have, where you are, and spread Krishna consciousness and become Krishna conscious. Become Krishna conscious, spread Krishna consciousness, and whatever you're doing, you're properly situated. You're on the transcendental plane.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, let's go on with Gopa. Would you like to read Gopa? Gopa, my darling, dear sister.
Yes. Let's see.
Okay, good.
Move the picture over. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22:6. It is my good fortune that I have been able to see you, for you cannot easily be seen by persons who have not subdued the mind or controlled the senses. I am all the more fortunate to have touched with my head the blessed dust of your feet. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Parampara system of disciplic succession is very important as a means of spiritual success. One becomes a Mahat by the grace of his Mahat spiritual master. If one takes shelter of the lotus feet of a great soul, there is every possibility of one's also becoming a great soul. When Maharaj Rahugna asked Jad Bharat about his wonderful achievement of spiritual success, he replied to the king that spiritual success is not possible simply by following the rituals of religion or simply by converting oneself into a sannyas or offering sacrifices as recommended in the scriptures. These methods are undoubtedly helpful for spiritual realization, but the real effect is brought about by the grace of a Mahatma. Because the common man is unable to control the senses and the mind, it is his duty to seek the shelter of a great soul or a great devotee of the Lord and just try to please him. That will make his life perfect. A common man cannot rise to the topmost stage of spiritual perfection simply by following the rituals and religious principles. He has to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and work under his direction faithfully and sincerely, and then he becomes perfect without a doubt.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's Srila Prabhupada.
Okay, tell us about that. Tell us about that, Bhagavad, seriously. This is such a wonderful opportunity.
So by taking shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master and turning your life over to only pleasing him, your life becomes like it says, Mahat. You become spiritual, and you can take his orders and go out and distribute them to everybody else.
Right. Or you take direction from him. This is your direction, right? This is, this is how-
to please the spiritual master is the disciples' topmost priority.
right. So we can, everyone can take this up. Srila Prabhupada is the Jagat Guru for this whole Hare Krishna movement, this ISKCON society. So we can take shelter of that, to act in a way that is pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, and to take that as our life and soul. Prabhupada did so many things in his life. He worked in a pharmacy. He had a pharmacy. He created all kinds of medicines. He said that he could have been richer than Birla. Birla was a very rich man in India, but you know, Krishna wanted him to do this. He heard from the self-realized soul. He took it up. Now we are hearing from the self-realized soul. Don't think we're getting gypped. We have Srila Prabhupada's books. Why did he spend endless hours in the middle of the night when the world was asleep writing these books for us, for the conditioned souls of Kali Yuga? You want a relationship with a Mahat? Read Srila Prabhupada's books and take up the instructions given there. Doesn't matter if you're working in this place or that place, and what are you going to do when you grow up? That's what you're going to do when you grow up. As soon as you understand that instruction, you've grown up. Hare Krishna. Okay, so now thank you, Gopaji. Let's go on with Chaitamayi. Chaita, would you like to read? Thank you, Gopa.
Hare Krishna, that was lovely. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22-7. I have fortunately been instructed by you, and thus great favor has been bestowed upon me. I thank God that I have listened with open ears to your pure words. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Manu said that since he was advised and instructed by Kardama Muni, he was very much favored. He considered himself lucky to receive the message by oral reception. It is especially mentioned here that one should be very inquisitive to hear with open ears from the authorized source of the bona fide spiritual master. How is one to receive? One should receive the transcendental message by oral reception. The word karna randrai means through the holes of the ears. Bhagavad Gita makes it clear that one can attain the highest perfection of spiritual life simply by offering service according to his ability, just as Arjuna served Krishna by his ability in the military art. Arjuna offered his service fully as a military man, and he became perfect. Similarly, an artist can attain perfection simply by performing artistic work under the direction of the spiritual master. If one is a literary man, he can write articles and poetry for the service of the Lord under the direction of the spiritual master. One has to receive the message of the spiritual master regarding how to act in one's capacity, for the spiritual master is expert in giving such instructions. This combination, the instruction of the spiritual master and the faithful execution of the instruction by the disciple, makes the entire process perfect.
This is what we've been talking about. This is where I sent this quote, starting Bhagavad Gita, makes it very clear, to every group that I'm attached to.
Hmm.
And it started like a whole thing because we have to understand what that means. Tisha, are you clear about this now? I mean, you know, we have all that we need to achieve the goal of life. You know,
As we're reading this, one point I'm seeing is that Krishna spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield. And that was an individual instruction. But we have that same instruction by reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita in so many languages around the world is bringing that same message that Krishna gave to Arjuna to people in Mongolia, China, South America, Australia, New Zealand. We see people around the world are becoming Krishna conscious and developing their love for Krishna simply by hearing from Srila Prabhupada, who's the main manifestation of that parampara in the world today.
You know, and all those people in China and South America and India and Antarctica or wherever, they are having to go through the same process of maintaining their bodies, maintaining their children, you know, getting clothes and whatever it means to live. They're doing that, but that is secondary. That is secondary. The main thing is to develop our love for Krishna and engage in his service. You know, and there's so many different ways that we can engage. Of course, it's recommended chanting Hare Krishna, engage in deity worship, offer your food. I mean, you know, Prabhupada has given us all of this.
Just to let you know, Sama, we're
Okay,
we're
I
running
am
a little
so
behind.
bad today. Okay, I'm sorry, everyone. I thought that this was a really important point because it created us kind of little bit of a tsunami. But we're meeting it head on. Okay, Premananda, why don't you read for us? Thank you, Chaita. Thank you, sweetie.
Okay, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28, 8 through 10. Swayambhuva Manu continued, O great sage, graciously be pleased to listen to the prayer of my humble self, for my mind is troubled by affection for my daughter. My daughter is the sister of Priyavrata and Uttanapada. She is seeking a suitable husband in terms of age, character, and good qualities. The moment she heard from the sage Narada of your noble character, learning, beautiful appearance, youth, and other virtues, she fixed her mind upon you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The girl Devahuti did not personally see Kardama Muni, nor did she personally experience his character or qualities, since there was no social intercourse by which she could gain such understanding. But she heard about Kardama Muni from the authority of Narad Muni. Hearing from an authority is a better experience than gaining personal understanding. She heard from Narad Muni that Kardama Muni was just fit to be her husband. Therefore, she became fixed in her heart that she would marry him, and she expressed her desire to her father, who therefore brought her before him.
Okay, very good. Premananda, just say something about hearing, listening, and learning, just as we see. You want to put it back, Pat? In case he needs to,
Yeah, I think Srila Prabhupada said, right? I think the mistake we make is we try to see Krishna by our eyes. We should see him by our ears, because hearing is the best form of seeing Krishna. And this particular conversation also reminded me about Rukmini Devi. Rukmini did not see Krishna, but just by hearing about him, she fell in love with him and just decided that, okay, he's going to be my husband, nobody else. So that's the power of hearing from great authorities and from great saints.
yes, very
So-
important. It depends who we hear from, because we
Right.
can easily be swayed. We're conditioned souls and we're very weak. So we have to hear from the right person. And
Absolutely.
that's the secret of success.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
How about Aaron? Aaron, are you with us? I don't know that. Aaron Webster.
So Aaron is Madhu Mangal Prabhu, Mother Ruchira's.
Oh,
Mother Ruchira's son. He may be able to come on. I'm not sure.
Madhu, are you there, my darling? Would you like to read? Is he going to want to read, you think?
Or is it Ruchira using his
Or Ruchira.
credentials?
No, it's Mother Mango Prabhu.
Oh,
Haribol, Madhu. Nice to see you or hear you. Can you read this for us? Would you like to?
No, I can't. I can't read
Okay.
fast.
Oh, okay, but you're following what we're doing?
Yeah, I am. I am here.
You're hearing, you're listening. We just had the
Yeah,
whole
I'm listening.
discussion. So that's the most important
Yeah.
thing. Well, it's
Yeah, I'm
really,
listening.
you have anything to add to what we've said?
No, not yet. Thank you.
Okay, sweetie, I'm so glad to, Madhu Mangal is the great carer for cows in this community. That is for sure. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll speak to you later then. Thank you so much. Okay, how about Ian? Ian, would you like to read? Where is Ian? Ian, he might have walked away. Ian?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Well, yes, perfectly. Why don't you read
Yeah.
it?
Okay, so 3.2.11. Therefore, please accept her, O chief of Brahmanas, for I offer her with faith, and she is in every respect fit to be your wife and take charge of your household duties. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The household duty of a man is not to satisfy his sense gratification, but remain with a wife and children, at the same time attain advancement in spiritual life. One who does not do so is not a householder, but a Gramedi. Two words are used in Sanskrit literature. One is Grihastha, the other is Gramedi. The difference between Gramedi and Grihastha is that Grihastha is also an ashram or spiritual order, but if one simply satisfies his senses as a householder, then he is a Gramedi. For a Gramedi, to accept a wife means to satisfy the senses, but for a Grihastha, a qualified wife is an assistant in every respect for advancement in spiritual activities. It is duty of the wife to take charge of household affairs and not to compete with the husband. A wife is meant to help, but she cannot help her husband unless he is completely equal to her age, character, and quality. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Would you like to comment on that, Ian?
Just some, the aspect of reason why one will marry. Some people marry because yes, it's the right thing to do. But as I said, yeah, really one is not just for sense gratification. Or have a wife, so going to, enjoy, sense gratification with her, for, like unlimitedly, but just for to involve into advancing, each has their duty to pay. But the main thing is that the Grihastha and the Gramedi difference is not to enjoy sense gratification, but to perform whatever function one have.
Yeah, to become Krishna conscious. And we
Yes.
see that sense gratification just it's never satisfied. There's no satisfaction, so that it might lead to divorce and all these other things that we see exhibited in the world today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's just go on so that we can, because of course we're running a little late. Thank you, Ian. Shukshma Rupini, my dear god sister, are you there, Shukshma? Don't see her anymore. Shukshma, are you there? Yeah. Shukshma Rupini, she might be driving. Shukshma Rupini, my dear god sister, drives a truck, but she might be hearing and not able to speak. Okay, Adorya Radha, why don't you read? Is she there? Yes, she is. Haribol.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22-12-13. To deny an offering that has come of itself is not common double even for one absolutely free from all attachment, much less one addicted to sensual pleasure. One who rejects an offering that comes of its own accord, but later begs a boon from a miser, thus loses his widespread reputation, and his pride is humbled by the needful behavior of others. The general procedure of Vedic marriage is that a father offers his daughter to a suitable boy. That is very respectable marriage. A boy should not go to the girl's father and ask for the hand of his daughter in marriage. That is considered to be humbling one's respectable position. Swayambhuva Manu wanted to convince Kardamuni, since he knew that the sage wanted to marry a suitable girl, and an offering just such a suitable wife. Do not reject the offer, or else, because you are indeed of a wife, you will have to ask for such a wife from someone else who may not behave with you so well. In that case, your position will be humble. Another feature of this incident is that Swayambhuva Manu was the emperor, but he went to offer his qualified daughter to a poor Brahmana, Kardama Muni, had no worldly possessions. He was a hermit living in the forest, but he was advanced in culture. Therefore, in offering one's daughter to a person, the culture and quality are counted as prominent, not wealth or any other material consideration.
That's what Sham Govinda said. One's character and culture are the prominent qualities, not wealth or any other material position. Do you have something to add to this about the procedure of giving a daughter in marriage?
Well, in this case, I think that the king offered his daughter to the Brahmana, and it's comparable with the offer to the food that to the prasadam that we rejected is coming from the another devotee, you know.
Oh,
I don't know.
that's interesting. So this offering of his daughter was compared to offering a nice plate of food. Well, that's kind of probably meant a little bit more to him, I'm thinking. Although that's a nice, you know, you have some Mahaprasad and somebody rejects it. That's what it is. That's beautiful, actually. Someone has some Mahaprasad and he offers it to someone else, and if that person rejects it, what a loss, right?
You can just say no.
Yeah, that is actually a very good example. Thank you for that. And anyone else have something? Chaita, did you want to say something about that?
No, I just love that analogy. It's beautiful, Odaria.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was very sweet. It took me a minute to understand it. Okay, how about Arundhati? Arundhati, would you like to read? Arundhati? Arundhati. Sometimes, are you there, Arundhati? Maybe. Oh, Arundhati, sorry, wait a minute. Maybe she's not going to read today. Okay, Manvatara, why don't you continue?
Text 14. Swayambhuva Manu continued, O wise man, I heard that you were prepared to marry. Please accept your hand, which is being offered to you by me, since you have not taken a vow of perpetual celibacy. Purport. The principle of brahmacharya is celibacy. There are two kinds of brahmacharis. One is called nanistika brahmachari, which means one who takes a vow of celibacy for his whole life, whereas the other is upakurabana brahmachari, is a brahmachari who takes the vow of celibacy up to a certain age. For example, he may take the vow to remain celibate for up to 25 years of age. Then, with the permission of his spiritual master, he enters married life. Brahmacharya is student life, the beginning of life in the spiritual orders, and the principle of brahmacharya is celibacy. Only a householder can indulge in sense gratification or sex life, not a brahmachari. Swayambhava Manu requested Kardama Muni to accept his daughter, since Kardama had not taken the vow of
Naishtika.
Brahmacharya. He was willing to marry, and the suitable daughter of a high royal family was presented.
Okay, I think we're just going to go on so that we can finish this. And
Actually, I just wanted to make one quick point out. In Premananda's forum, he was expressing that someone had told him that a brahmachari is a person that always stays in the ashram with the spiritual master. But this purport proves that that's not true, because here it says a Naishtika brahmachari means one who takes a vow of celibacy his whole life. So there are many examples of Naishtika brahmacharis like Bhaktisiddhanta, Narottam Das Thakur, and others who left the ashram of their spiritual master or matured beyond that and were no longer simply students in the ashram of their spiritual master, but are still brahmacharis. So Premananda, that's just a clarification about the term brahmachari, and especially now in Kali Yuga, if you're living a celibate life alone without a family and following spiritual process, then you're a brahmachari.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for the confirmation.
Yes.
okay, good. Let's go on with Vaishnavi. Are you there, Vaishnavi?
She had to go, Mataji. She's not with us.
Okay. So, Sham Govinda, why don't you read? And then Ekarata, Radhika.
3:22:15. The great sage replied, "Certainly I have a desire to marry, and your daughter has not yet married or given her word to anyone. Therefore, our marriage according to the Vedic system can take place." Purport. There are different kinds of marriages, of which the first-class marriage is held by inviting a suitable bridegroom for the daughter and giving her in charity, well-dressed and well-decorated with ornaments, along with a dowry according to the means of the father. There are other kinds of marriage, such as Gandharva marriage and marriage by love, which are also accepted as marriage. Even if one is forcibly kidnapped and later on accepted as a wife, that is also accepted. But Kadamba Muni accepted the first-class way of marriage because the father was willing and the daughter was qualified. She had never offered her heart to anyone else. All these considerations made Kadamba Muni agree to accept the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu.
Okay. Let's go on with Radhika. Eka Radhika.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22-16. Let your daughter's desire for marriage, which is recognized in the Vedic scriptures, be fulfilled. Who would not accept her hand? She is so beautiful that her bodily luster alone, she excels the beauty of her ornaments. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There are 8 forms of marriage mentioned in the scripture Manu Smriti, but only one process of marriage, Brahma or Rajasika marriage, is now current. Other kinds of marriage by love, by exchange of garlands, or by kidnapping the bride are now forbidden in this Kali age. Formerly, at their pleasure, Kshatriyas would kidnap a princess from another royal house, and there would be a fight between the Kshatriya and the girl's family. Then, if the kidnapper was the winner, the girl would be offered to him for marriage. Even Krishna married Rukmini by that process, and some of his sons and grandsons also married by kidnapping. Krishna's grandsons kidnapped Duryodhana's daughter, which caused a fight between the Kuru and the Yadu families. Afterward, an adjustment was made by the elderly members of the Kudu family. Such marriages were current in bygone ages, but at the present moment, they are impossible because the strict principles of Kshatriya life have practically been abolished. Since India has become dependent on foreign countries, the particular influences of our social orders have been lost. Now, according to the scriptures, everyone is a Shudra. The so-called Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas have forgotten their traditional activities, and in the absence of these activities, they're called Shudras. It is said in the scriptures, Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. In the age of Kali, everyone will be like Shudras. Their traditional social customs are not followed in this age, although formerly they were followed strictly. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So we see this is confirming what we're our whole discussion, that because this is a fallen age, this whole Varnashram system is not being based on God consciousness. It's being perverted. So the safe path for us is to actually take up the devotional service and keep our focus on that, and that's our main energy, rather than what we're doing and how we're functioning in the world, which is important and shouldn't be neglected. Okay. Yes, let's go on now. Tisha, would you like to read? And then Gopa?
322, verse 17 through 19. I have heard that Vishvavasu, the great Gandharva, his mind stupefied with infatuation, fell from his airplane after seeing your daughter playing with a ball on the roof of the palace, for she was indeed beautiful, with her tinkling ankle bells and her eyes moving to and fro. What wise man would not welcome her, the very ornament of womanhood, the beloved daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and sister of Uttanapada? Those who have not worshipped the gracious feet of the goddess of fortune cannot even perceive her, yet she has come of her own accord to seek my hand. Therefore, I shall accept this chaste girl as my wife, on the condition that after she bears semen from my body, I shall accept a life of devotional service accepted by the most perfect human beings. That process was described by Lord Vishnu. It is free from envy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to Vedic principles, the first part of life should be utilized in brahmacharya for the development of character and spiritual qualities. In the next part of life, one may accept a wife and beget children, but one should not beget children like cats and dogs. Kardama Muni desired to beget a child who would be a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should beget a child who can perform the duties of Vishnu. Otherwise, there is no need to produce children.
Okay, let's go on with Gopa reading this, and then we'll discuss it a little. Gopa?
Okay, where do you leave off?
There are two kinds of children born of good fathers.
Okay, right there at the top. All right, purport. The Srila Prabhupada continued. There are two kinds of children born of good fathers. One is educated in Krishna consciousness so that he can be delivered from the clutches of Maya in that very life. And the other is a ray of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and teaches the world the ultimate goal of life, as will be described later in later chapters. Kardama Muni begot such a child, Kapila, the incarnation of the personality of Godhead, who enunciated the philosophy of Shankha. Great householders pray to God to send his representatives so that there may be an auspicious movement in human society. Sorry. This is one reason to beget a child. Another reason is that a highly enlightened parent can train a child in Krishna consciousness so that the child will not have to come back again to this miserable world. Parents should see to it that the child born of them does not enter the womb of a mother again. Unless one can train a child for liberation in that life, there is no need to marry or produce children. If human society produces children like cats and dogs for the disturbance of social order, then the world becomes hellish, as it has in this age of Kali. In this age, neither parents nor their children are trained. Both are animalistic and simply eat, sleep, mate, defend, and gratify their senses. This disorder in social life cannot bring peace to human society.
Oh my goodness. Hare Krishna. You have a comment, Gopa?
Oh, well, I pray every day that my children don't enter another womb. But,
Yeah.
you know, they got to do some work too, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Well-
They have, but you know, the children of the devotees, especially the old devotees, they get a little special thing there because they had to go through so much sacrifice on their own accord while we were trying to, you know, spread the movement.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
But,
lament. Okay,
Jai.
Jai.
Prabhupada.
Okay, we have one last text. Premananda, would you read it?
Yes,
you,
Mataji.
Gopaji.
Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:22-20. The highest authority for me is the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom this wonderful creation emanates, and in whom its sustenance and dissolution rest. He is the origin of all Prajapatis, the personalities meant to produce living entities in this world. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning of creation, the Prajapatis were meant to produce the large population which was to reside in the planets of the gigantic universe. But Kardama Muni said that although his father was Prajapati, who desired him to produce children, actually his origin was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, because Vishnu is the origin of everything. He is the actual creator of this universe. He is the actual maintainer, and when everything is annihilated, it rests in him only. That is the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Marrying and begetting a child is considered to liquidate one's debts to the family in which one is born. There are many debts which are imposed upon a child just after his birth. There are debts to the family in which one is born, debts to the demigods, debts to the Pitas, debts to the rishis, etc. But if someone engages only in the service of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who is actually worshipable, then even without trying to liquidate other debts, one becomes free from all obligations. Kardama Muni preferred to devote his life as a servant of the Lord in Paramahamsa knowledge, and to beget a child only for that purpose, not to beget numberless children to fill up the vacancies in the universe.
Oh. But do you want to explain this and why you chose that picture in the top? I thought that was really...
Sure. He's explained what happened was that Kardama Muni had personal experience, if we remember from previous chapters, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who had come to Bindu Sarovara, or to the place where he was performing his tapasya, and had spoken to him and foretold everything that was taking place. And what Kardama is doing is he's explaining to Swayambhuva Manu that he'll accept Devahuti as his wife to fulfill his duties and produce a child. But he says here that the highest authority for me is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not his debt to anyone, as was described in this last part of the purport. So after he produces the child, Kapila-dev, he'll leave home. So I chose that because for him, he's had personal experience of the Lord, been instructed and have a conversation with him, been instructed what to do, and he's telling Swayambhuva Manu that that's what he's going to do.
Right, go back down to the purport again for the last section of the purport. This basic, but if someone engages only in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord, who is actually worshipable, then even without trying to liquidate other debts, one becomes free from all obligations. So that's the crux of what we've been talking about here. Premananda, do you want to add something to that in that light?
Yes, I think this is very important instruction for all of us, that we may have our social responsibilities. We have to maintain our family, parents, whatever, but we should never forget that ultimately we have to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we should never forget Krishna. So no matter whatever we do at a material level, social level, our final goal is Krishna.
Yeah, so that should make it very easy, in a way, as far as making decisions of what to do and what is our goal in life. Our goal in life is to please Krishna, and we have been given volumes of literature and wonderful association. I'm so grateful for the associations, this wonderful sort of sangha here, where we can become reminded of our actual goal of human life. And not get distracted with thinking, oh man, I'm not going to make it doing this or that. We're not going to make it in the world. Good if we don't make it in the world. We're not supposed to make it in this world. We've already made it too long. Okay, so this was very wonderful. Does anyone have any other, anything to add? Chita?
I have a question, but that's from the last class, because I couldn't attend last one
Yes.
because I was in New Vrindavan with my spiritual master celebrating his Vyasa Puja. So the question I have for Prabhu is, so the Bindu Sarovar that's mentioned here, is it the Bindu Sarovar in Bhubaneswar, or it is some other
Yes, you missed, we had pictures of it and photos and stories.
Right, I missed that class, sorry.
Yes, yes. It was described in one of the earlier purports that when the Lord arrived on Garuda and saw Kardama Muni performing the tapasya, then tears fell from his eyes and actually created the Bindu Sarovara. So we actually discussed last week how we're reading about the time of Swayambhuva Manu. One Manu's life, if you remember, is the cycle of 4 yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali. That cycle takes 4,320,000 years times 72 equals 1 Manu. We're halfway through the 7th Manu, Vaivasvata Manu. So this happened billions and billions of years ago. But because it's spiritual energy, because whenever Brahma recreates the universe after his night, when there's a recreation, Bindu Sarovara and other holy dhams are again manifest, because they're actually eternal dhams and places of residence, even in the material world. We read about that with Markandeya's pastimes. Do you know his pastime? Markandeya, do you know the story of Markandeya?
No, I don't remember now.
Markandeya was a great sage who performed austerities to please Lord Shiva. And when he finally concluded and he got the perfection of his desire, Lord Shiva manifested before him, or Lord Vishnu, and asked him, what do you want? What are you looking for? He said, I want to see the wonder of the Lord's Maya energy, which was a strange benediction. But he was benedicted to live for 7 kalpas. He was going to live for 7 days of Brahma. And many of the holy dhams in the Puranas, where it's describing a mahatmya of a dham, like Godrum or Puri, what happens is that when there's a complete devastation, you've seen this picture of Lord Vishnu, baby Krishna, baby Vishnu with his toe in his mouth. So what happens is that he sucks the whole entire universe into his belly, but those dhams still exist. And Markandeya was saved on those dhams in the devastations of water because they are eternal. So yes, that Bindu Sarovara is a holy place created by the Lord and is still the same place in Bhubaneswar. And Samapriya, tell the story about what happened when we went there. You told it last week, but you can tell it again.
Oh yeah, well, we went in this lake because we heard, is that the one that if you develop pure love of God as soon as you go in there?
No, your health is good when you...
Your health is good.
Yeah.
Of course, I was in India and my health was terrible. But anyway, so we went in there and I felt these things. I couldn't figure out what it was underneath my feet. Crackle, crackle, crackle. And we noticed that for as far as you could see in the lake, there were little snails. and we were crackling on the snail. It was, oh my God, it was a little freaky. My health might have gotten better, but I don't know about their health. So we left that. But I wanted to say something real quick about Bindu Sarova and the Lord feeling such. He is so sensitive and has so much compassion that, you know, he starts to cry at the sacrifice and austerities that his devotee goes through to please him. So don't think for a minute Krishna is not seeing the sacrifice and the austerity. If we're conditioned souls, like, and we appreciate it, what to speak of Krishna? They're doing this for me. So everything that we do and giving our heart to Krishna, there's no loss. This is real love. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so
for the
much.
question, Premananda.
Thank you.
you.
Okay, well, I think we'll end here. Is that all right? We'll
Aye.
see you next time. Bunch of help for the Thank you all very much.
Hare Krishna, have a good week, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare Bol.
Hare Hare, Radhe Radhe.